Iran's parliament has voted to close the strategic Strait of Hormuz, a crucial shipping lane through which about 20% of the world's oil passes, potentially blocking $1 billion in daily oil shipments and driving prices higher. The closure awaits approval from Iran's Supreme Council. The narrow strait is vulnerable to disruption through naval mines, missile attacks, and small boat swarms, tactics Iran may use based on previous proxy conflicts like those in Yemen. While such a move could severely impact global oil supply, especially for Asia, it would also harm Iran's own economy and likely provoke a strong U.S. naval response, the New York Post has reported. Experts suggest Iran's threat serves more as leverage than an actual intent to close the strait. Russia is prepared to assist Iran amid the ongoing Middle East conflict, but Tehran must first specify its needs, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has said. He confirmed that Russian President Vladimir Putin will meet the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi to discuss possible support and hear Iran's proposals. This comes after the United States did airstrikes that targeted 3 Iranian nuclear sites, escalating the tensions and drawing the United States directly into the conflict that was initiated by Israeli attacks on Iran, The Hill has reported. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi announced he will travel to Moscow for talks with Russia's President Vladimir Putin following recent U.S. airstrikes on Iranian nuclear sites. Araghchi condemned the strikes as a violation of international law and warned that Iran would respond in self-defense. The United States, under President Trump, justified the attacks as necessary to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev criticized the strikes, calling them ineffective, and claimed that several countries are ready to supply Iran with nuclear warheads. Medvedev also warned that the United States is being drawn into a new Middle East conflict and said the attacks have politically strengthened Iran, NDTV has reported. Araghchi accused the United States of betraying diplomacy and ruled out resuming talks under current conditions. Pope Leo XIV issued a passionate plea for peace during his Sunday prayer, urging global diplomatic efforts amid escalating Middle East tensions following U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear sites. Condemning war's human toll, the Pope stressed that, quote, no armed victory can compensate for the pain of mothers, and called for diplomacy over violence. He also highlighted the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, warning that it risks being forgotten. Iran has vowed retaliation, with the foreign minister warning of, quote, everlasting consequences, the Daily Star has reported. Meanwhile, President Trump praised the military and invoked God after the strike, reigniting controversy over his strained relationship with the Vatican. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was the target of a foiled assassination plot by a Polish pensioner with long-standing Soviet ties. This, according to Ukraine's security chief. The man was allegedly activated by Russia to kill Zelensky at a Polish airport using a sniper rifle or a drone. The plot was uncovered through joint efforts by Ukrainian and Polish intelligence. This comes amid ongoing threats against Zelensky, who has survived multiple assassination attempts since Russia's 2022 invasion, Newsweek has reported. Meanwhile, Russian missile and drone attacks killed at least 14 civilians in Ukraine, including 9 in Kyiv, as Zelensky visited the United Kingdom and peace talks loom in Istanbul. Around 145 people, mostly teenage girls, were stabbed with syringes during France's nationwide music festival, sparking fears of chemical injections. Victims reported feeling unwell and were hospitalized for toxicology tests. Attacks occurred across the country, with 13 in Paris. Authorities have arrested 12 suspects, including one man in Metz, identified via CCTV. It's unclear if the syringes contain drugs, the U.S. Sun has reported. In a separate violent incident, a bride was fatally shot at her wedding by a hooded gunman, and one attacker also died. Reportedly, he was run over by the groom's car during the chaos. Michigan police have identified 31-year-old Brian Anthony Browning as the gunman who opened fire during a Sunday morning church service at Cross Point Community Church in Wayne, Michigan. Armed with multiple weapons and wearing tactical gear, Browning was stopped by a quick-acting church security team after being struck by a parishioner's truck. He was fatally shot outside the church entrance. One person was injured but is in stable condition. Police say Browning may have been experiencing a mental health crisis and found more weapons at his home, Fox News has reported. The motive remains unclear and the investigation is ongoing. A dangerous and prolonged heat wave is gripping much of central and eastern United States, with extreme heat warnings in effect through midweek. Cities including New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. could see temperatures near or above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, with heat index values reaching up to 115 degrees Fahrenheit due to high humidity. Record-breaking highs were reported over the weekend in several states. Nighttime temperatures in the 70s and 80s are offering little relief, increasing health risks, The Guardian has reported. Officials are urging precautions, calling it the deadliest weather threat for cities like New York. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security has issued a public warning of a heightened threat environment following recent U.S. military strikes on Iran's nuclear sites. While no specific threats have been identified, officials caution that pro-Iranian hackers may launch cyber attacks, and there is an increased risk of violence, hate crimes, and extremist activity in the United States. The bulletin also warns of possible retaliation if Iranian leadership calls for violence, CBS News has reported. Security has been tightened in major cities like New York, and the State Department has issued a global travel alert for Americans abroad. 6 people are dead and 2 remain missing after a boat carrying 10 people capsized on Lake Tahoe Saturday during a storm with 6 to 8 foot swells. The U.S. Coast Guard searched over 390 square miles before suspending the search on Sunday. 2 survivors were rescued and hospitalized, NBC News has reported. The 27-foot boat sank around 3 p.m. local time, and the victims have not yet been identified. The U.S. government has appealed a federal judge's order to release Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Maryland father mistakenly deported to El Salvador in March, now facing human smuggling charges. After the Supreme Court ordered his return, Abrego was arrested and charged but pleaded not guilty. Judge Barbara Holmes ruled that he should be released pending trial, citing due process concerns and a lack of solid evidence. However, the government requested a stay, signaling plans to keep him in custody and restart deportation proceedings, NBC News has reported. A hearing on his release terms is set for Wednesday, though immigration detention remains likely. Iran has claimed responsibility for Monday's missile attacks on U.S. military bases in Doha, calling it retaliation for recent American strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. The attacks mark a significant escalation in regional tensions following the U.S. intervention in the Israel-Iran conflict. Qatar condemned the assault on the air base, but confirmed that its defense systems intercepted the missiles, preventing any casualties, France 24 has reported. Officials are closely monitoring the situation as concerns grow over further escalation. President Donald Trump announced a ceasefire between Israel and Iran following a 12-day conflict that he called the 12-day war, but said both sides had violated the truce. Israel accused Iran of launching missiles after the ceasefire began, which Iran denied. Trump expressed disappointment with both nations. The conflict began after Israel struck Iranian sites on June 13th to prevent a perceived nuclear threat, prompting retaliatory attacks from Iran, the Associated Press reported. The fighting has left 28 dead and over 1,300 affected in Israel. President Donald Trump's return to the NATO summit is overshadowed by his surprise strikes on Iranian nuclear sites and an abrupt announcement of a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. Though Trump aims to highlight a new NATO pledge for increased defense spending, pushing allies toward a 5% GDP target, tensions over his unpredictable stance on NATO persist. European leaders remain weary of U.S. commitment, especially after past threats to abandon Article 5 and comments encouraging Russia to target underspending members, the Associated Press has reported. Meanwhile, President Trump's looming trade deadline with the European Union and threats of massive tariffs add further strain to transatlantic relations. At least 43 Palestinians were killed Monday in ongoing Israeli attacks across Gaza, bringing the war's death toll to over 56,000, with more than 131,000 wounded. Among the dead were 20 people seeking food at aid centers run by the United States and Israel's backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which the UN has condemned for allegedly weaponizing aid. Critics described the sites as human slaughterhouses amid worsening famine conditions. Since late May, over 400 aid seekers have been killed near distribution centers, Al Jazeera has reported. Israeli strikes continue to hit residential areas and shelters, compounding the humanitarian crisis. Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick publicly clashed with Texas Governor Greg Abbott after Abbott vetoed Patrick's top legislative priority, a full ban on THC products. Abbott argued the bill, SB3, was legally flawed and called for a special session to implement tighter regulations instead. Patrick accused the governor of misleading him and vowed to continue pushing for an outright ban, citing concerns over youth access and weak enforcement, the Texas Tribune has reported. The dispute marks a rare and escalating rift between two of Texas's most powerful Republicans, leaving lawmakers caught between opposing pressures in the upcoming special session. Senator Tim Kaine is holding off on scheduling a vote on his War Powers resolution until after a classified briefing Tuesday on President Trump's recent strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities. The resolution, which could come to a vote as early as Wednesday, would let Democrats formally challenge Trump's actions, putting pro-Israel Democrats in a tough spot between supporting their base or long-held policy views. Critics, including some Republicans, argue Trump bypassed Congress and violated constitutional norms, Axios has reported. The strikes, followed by a surprise Iran-Israel ceasefire, were conducted without briefing top Democratic lawmakers, further escalating tensions. The Senate parliamentarian Elizabeth McDowell dealt a blow to Republicans by ruling that several provisions in their mega bill to fast-track offshore oil and gas projects and expand resource extraction violate Senate rules. These provisions, which aim to bypass environmental reviews and mandate rapid lease approvals, failed to meet the Byrd Rule and cannot pass with a simple majority. Democrats, led by Senator Jeff Merkley, celebrated the rulings as a procedural victory against what they call a GOP effort to gut environmental protections and sell off public lands, The Hill has reported. McDowell is still reviewing additional Alaska-related provisions in the bill. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell emphasized the Fed's commitment to controlling inflation, saying policymakers will hold off on changes until they better understand the impact of tariffs on prices. He described economic growth as strong and the labor market near full employment, but noted inflation remains above the 2% target. Powell cautioned that the effects of tariffs are still uncertain and that the Fed is prepared to wait before adjusting policy, CNBC has reported. His cautious stance may further irritate President Trump, who has criticized Powell publicly. Tesla stock surged after the company successfully launched its robo-taxi test in Austin, Texas on Sunday. CEO Elon Musk announced the rollout on X, noting a $4.20 flat fee for rides. Early reports from users on social media confirmed that Tesla Model Ys marked as robo-taxis were actively picking up passengers, with some riders taking multiple trips. The positive reception helped Tesla's stock close up to 8.2% higher on Monday, Yahoo Finance has reported. Compass has sued Zillow, accusing it of using anti-competitive tactics by banning private home listings if sellers market their properties off Zillow's platform for more than one day. Compass claims this Zillow ban protects Zillow's monopoly by forcing listings onto its site and limiting homeowner choice. The lawsuit seeks to stop Zillow from enforcing this policy and demands damages. Zillow denies the allegations, saying it aims to create a fair market, ABC News has reported. The lawsuit comes amid a cooling U.S. housing market, with home sales slowing due to high mortgage rates and rising prices. Canada's first beach cleaning robot, b.c.begley, has been launched on Lake Simcoe's shores. This sand sifting, remote operated robot collects debris like plastic, glass, metal, and paper to prevent pollution in the Great Lakes. Unveiled at Sebald Point Provincial Park, B.bot is part of the Great Lakes Plastic Cleanup Project, which operates at over 225 locations and has removed nearly 244,000 pieces of plastic thus far, CTV has reported. The initiative is supported by Pollution Probe, the Ontario Ministry of the Environment, and Unsmoke Canada. A laser navigation issue caused Japanese company iSpace's lunar lander Resilience to crash into the moon earlier this month, marking their second failed landing attempt in 2 years. The lander was descending rapidly when its laser range finder failed to properly measure distance, leading to the crash near the moon's south pole. Now, despite past setbacks, including a 2023 crash due to bad software, iSpace plans a third lunar landing attempt in the year 2027 with NASA's cooperation, investing over $10 million in improvements, the Associated Press reported. The CEO affirmed that the company's commitment to learning from failures and then moving forward with future missions. SpaceX launched a Falcon 9 rocket from California's Vandenberg Space Force Base on June the 23rd, carrying 70 payloads on its Transporter 14 rideshare mission. The payloads include microsats, cube seats, re-entry capsules, and a memorial mission carrying cremated remains and DNA aboard the exploration company's Nix reusable spacecraft. The Falcon 9's first stage successfully landed on the drone ship Of Course I Still Love You, marking its 26th flight, nearing SpaceX's reusability record, Space.com has reported. Over nearly 2 hours, the rocket's upper stage will deploy the diverse payloads, which include Earth-observing satellites and a commercial docking demonstration planned later this year. A skull, discovered in a well in northeastern China in 2018, nicknamed Dragon Man, has been genetically linked to the elusive Denisovans, an ancient human group known mostly from small bone fragments. This finding could be the first Denisovan skull ever identified, offering new insights into the appearance of this mysterious population. Denisovans, discovered in 2010 through DNA from a finger bone in Siberia, lived alongside and interbred with early Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, CNN has reported. The research, published recently, is expected to spark significant debate and help fill in the gaps in our understanding of human evolution and ancient interactions. 2 young bears, Mish and Lucy, escaped their enclosure at Wildwood Devon Wildlife Park in the United Kingdom and devoured a week's supply of honey and snacks before falling asleep. The incident, which lasted about an hour, posed no threat to the public, though visitors were briefly moved to a secure area. Keepers safely returned the bears using recall training. The park blamed the escape on an operational error and has launched an internal investigation to prevent future incidents, CBS News has reported. Police were also present at the scene. Brazilian tourist Juliana Marins, 26, was found dead after falling from a cliff near the crater of Mount Rinjani, an active volcano in Indonesia. She survived the initial fall during a group hike, but could not be reached for days due to dangerous terrain and poor weather. Despite being spotted alive on Saturday, rescuers lost track of her amid thick fog and were only able to reach her body on Tuesday after a complex operation, the BBC has reported. Efforts to retrieve her remain ongoing, and her family criticized the decision to keep the trail open following her fall. A stark new United Kingdom government security strategy warns that the public must, quote, actively prepare for potential war on home soil amid rising global threats. The document highlights growing nuclear risks, including from Iran, and warns that arms control has failed to keep pace. It cites increased aggression from powers like China, Russia, and North Korea, who are collaborating in cyber, space, and underwater warfare, and potentially using terror and criminal groups as proxies. Critical infrastructure is at risk, and hostile actions like espionage and sabotage are on the rise. Labor leader Keir Starmer pledged to boost defense spending to 5% of GDP, the Mirror has reported. Ministers called for a revival of World War II-style national unity and a focus on modernizing defense, securing borders, and advancing technologies like artificial intelligence to ensure national resilience. In a recent immigration crackdown, U.S. federal agents arrested 11 Iranian nationals over 48 hours across 8 different states, including individuals with suspected ties to terrorist groups like Hezbollah and Iran's Revolutionary Guard. One detainee was on the U.S. terror watch list, and several had prior criminal convictions. ICE also arrested a U.S. citizen for allegedly threatening to shoot officers and harboring an illegal immigrant. While no specific terror plots have been linked to the arrest, officials say the individuals pose a public safety risk, CBS News has reported. The operations follow heightened U.S.-Iran tensions and a broader push by the Trump administration to ramp up immigration enforcement. In one of the deadliest 48-hour periods in months, Russian attacks killed dozens of Ukrainian civilians, including a 5-year-old boy and an 11-year-old girl, just as NATO allies gathered for a key meeting. On Tuesday, a missile strike killed 15 people and injured over 170, causing unprecedented destruction to homes, schools, and hospitals. A day earlier, 9 were killed in a Kyiv apartment strike. Additional fatalities were reported across several Ukrainian regions, CNN has reported. A passenger train with 500 people was also damaged. Daniel Park, a suspect charged in connection with the May bombing outside a Palm Springs fertility clinic, has died in federal custody, the Bureau of Prisons announced. Park, 32, was found unresponsive at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Los Angeles and later pronounced dead at a hospital. The cause of death is unknown. Park was accused of supplying explosives to bomber Guy Bartkus, who died in the blast, CBS News has reported. Park had been extradited from Poland after fleeing the United States following the incident. Sean Diddy Combs confirmed that he will not testify in his federal sex trafficking and racketeering trial, telling the judge he made the decision after thorough discussion with his lawyers. The prosecution rested after 6 weeks of testimony from 34 witnesses, including 2 ex-girlfriends, who said they were coerced into sex acts at so-called freak-offs. Combs, who has pleaded not guilty, has remained jailed without bail. The defense rested without calling witnesses, and closing arguments are set for Thursday, the Associated Press has reported. The judge will later decide on defense motions to dismiss the charges. Cobra Kai actor Martin Kove allegedly bit co-star Alicia Hannah Kim on the arm during a VIP event at SummerCon in Washington, leaving a visible bite mark. This is according to a police report. Hannah Kim said Kove grabbed and bit her after she tapped him on the shoulder to say hello. Kove admitted to the bite, saying it was meant as a joke and referencing their playful behavior on set, NBC News has reported. Though Hannah Kim declined to press charges, she reported the incident to police for documentation. Kove was asked to leave the event. Fitness influencer Gloria Zamora and her date Hector Garduno were fatally shot by her estranged husband, Thomas Lizarraga, in a restaurant parking lot in Fontana, California on Saturday. An off-duty police officer at the scene shot and killed Lizarraga after the attack. Zamora, a mother of 7, was in the process of divorcing Lizarraga. Garduno was also a father of 4, ABC News has reported. A GoFundMe for Zamora's children has raised over $25,000. NATO leaders met in The Hague to discuss increasing defense spending to 5% of GDP amid pressure from U.S. President Donald Trump. Secretary General Mark Rutte praised Trump's leadership, saying the U.S. would no longer shoulder the burden alone. Most members support the new targets, though Spain and Slovakia voiced concerns. Spain is aiming for just 2.1%, calling the percentage debate misguided. The summit also reaffirmed NATO's commitment to Ukraine and mutual defense. Trump, attending his first NATO summit since 2019, focused more on Middle East tensions than Ukraine, the BBC has reported. Despite some unease, leaders emphasized alliance unity and strength. The United Kingdom will purchase 12 U.S. made F-35A fighter jets capable of carrying nuclear weapons, strengthening its nuclear posture, and joining NATO's dual capable aircraft mission. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer will announce the move at the NATO summit, urging allies to boost support for the alliance. The decision also reinforces the United Kingdom's commitment to NATO, and it's expected to support 20,000 United Kingdom jobs, with Britain contributing 15% to the F-35 global supply chain, CNN has reported. Families of inmates at Tehran's Evin prison are sharing accounts of damage and casualties after an Israeli airstrike hit the facility on Monday. The strike, part of Israel's broader offensive against Iran, was confirmed by the IDF, which called the prison a symbol of oppression. Iranian media reported damage to the prison and the death of a doctor, though full casualty details remain unclear. Evin, known for housing political prisoners and reports of human rights abuses, has since cut off communications and canceled visits, ABC News has reported. The strike drew international criticism, including from France, which said it endangered civilians and deviated from Israel's stated goals. 7 Israeli soldiers were killed in southern Gaza when a Palestinian militant detonated a bomb on their armored vehicle, one of the deadliest incidents for Israel in Gaza in months. The attack in Khan Yunis came just after a ceasefire had ended between Israel and Iran. Fighting in Gaza has continued since Hamas's October 7, 2023 assault on Israel, which killed around 1,200 people and led to over 860 Israeli military deaths to date, the Associated Press has reported. Ceasefire efforts have repeatedly stalled, and about 50 hostages from the initial attack remain in captivity. Czech authorities have detained 5 teenagers, most under 18, for being radicalized online by the Islamic State and promoting hate against minorities, Jews, and the LGBTQ+ community. 2 have been charged with terror-related crimes after attempting to set fire to a synagogue in January of 2024. The group was also involved in online efforts to recruit fighters for ISIS. Weapons were seized during raids in the Czech Republic and in Austria, the Associated Press has reported. Officials warned of the growing threat of youth radicalization online, noting the suspects had no ties to the local Muslim community. 20 people were injured by a lightning strike on Tuesday evening at Lake Murray Public Park near Lexington, South Carolina. 12 children and 6 adults were taken to the hospital, while 2 others left on their own. The injuries are non-life-threatening. The lightning struck during a hot, sunny day with a brief passing storm cloud, NBC News has reported. Emergency services responded, and the park was temporarily closed, but will reopen on Wednesday. The cargo ship Morning Midas, carrying around 3,000 vehicles to Mexico, sank in the North Pacific near Alaska weeks after a fire disabled it. The 600-foot vessel, operated by London-based Zodiac Maritime, went down in deep waters off the Aleutian Islands after the crew abandoned ship due to an onboard fire on June the 3rd. All 22 crew members were safely rescued. The ship contained over 1,800 metric tons of fuel, but no pollution has been detected so far. Authorities are monitoring the area with pollution control vessels as a precaution, CBS News has reported. The cause of the fire, which may have involved electric vehicles, remains under investigation. The FBI is ramping up counterterrorism efforts following recent U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear sites and Iran's retaliatory attack on a U.S. base in Qatar. A memo sent to FBI field offices directs a renewed focus on terror threats, including domestic risks, aligning with an earlier internal report prioritizing actions against Iran and its proxies. This shift comes amid internal concerns over agents being diverted from counterterrorism to immigration enforcement. The FBI said it routinely reallocates resources based on evolving national security threats, CBS News has reported. Meanwhile, President Trump continues to emphasize immigration crackdowns as a central policy. U.S. Representative LaMonica McIver is set to be arraigned Wednesday on federal charges of assaulting and interfering with immigration officers during a May 9th oversight visit to the Delaney Hall Detention Center in Newark, New Jersey. McIver, a Democrat, faces 3 counts and could face up to 8 years in prison. She denies the allegations and plans to fight them in court. The case, brought by Trump-appointed U.S. Attorney Alina Habba, has drawn criticism from fellow Democrats, who argue McIver was exercising her legal right to oversight, the Associated Press has reported. A video shows a chaotic scene with unclear physical contact between McIver and officers. Thomas Lee Gudinas, 51, was executed Tuesday evening in Florida for the 1994 rape and murder of Michelle McGrath near a Central Florida bar. After being sentenced to death in 1995, his appeals, citing mental illness and constitutional concerns, were rejected by both state and federal courts. Gudinas repented before the lethal injection. He was the 7th person executed in Florida this year, which leads the nation in executions in 2025, NBC News has reported. Officials reported no operational issues despite the increased execution pace. Speaker Mike Johnson declared the War Powers Act unconstitutional, rejecting bipartisan efforts to use the law to block President Trump from further military action in Iran, following recent strikes on Iranian nuclear sites. Johnson argued the act infringes on the president's constitutional powers as commander-in-chief and refused to hold a vote on a war powers resolution. Meanwhile, lawmakers, including Representatives Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna, have pushed resolutions to limit Trump's military actions without congressional approval, The Hill has reported. Johnson defended past presidents' unilateral strikes, emphasizing the president's sole authority over military decisions, while some Democrats acknowledge past mistakes in bypassing Congress and warn against repeating them with Trump. The House voted 344 to 79 to table Representative Al Green's resolution to impeach President Donald Trump over his recent strikes on Iran, with bipartisan support to block the effort. Most Democrats, including top leadership, sided with the Republicans to kill the measure, reflecting political caution despite progressive calls for impeachment. Green argued Trump's actions amounted to an unauthorized war declaration, Fox News has reported. Some progressives, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, also backed impeachment, but House leaders, including Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, urged focusing on forcing the administration to justify its actions to Congress rather than pursuing impeachment immediately. Representative Thomas Massie is escalating his feud with President Trump, mocking Vice President J.D. Vance on X and criticizing Trump's recent military actions in Iran as unconstitutional. The clash intensified after Massie opposed a major tax and spending bill central to Trump's agenda, prompting Trump to label him not MAGA and vow to back a primary challenger. Trump's team has even launched a super PAC aimed at unseating Massie in 2026. Despite the attacks, Massie remains defiant, citing a surge in fundraising, Axios has reported. Speaker Johnson offered only lukewarm support for Massie, acknowledging Trump's frustration. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. testified before the House Committee on Energy and Commerce Tuesday about the 2026 budget, facing sharp criticism from Democrats over proposed health funding cuts and a perceived lack of scientific rigor. Lawmakers raised concerns about cuts to Medicaid, HIV vaccine research, and mental health services, warning they could harm vulnerable populations, CBS News has reported. Republicans largely defended Kennedy, praising his push to reform the system, while Kennedy insisted his policies are rooted in evidence-based gold standard science. At least 16 people have died in Kenya after nationwide protest on Wednesday against police brutality and poor governance, according to the Human Rights Commission. Demonstrations spread to 23 of 47 counties, with protesters calling for the president's resignation. Property was destroyed, police stations were burned, and shops in Nairobi were looted. The unrest was fueled by anger over the death of a blogger in custody and a civilian shot during related protest, NBC News has reported. Police defended their response, while families began identifying victims in morgues. Japan has executed Takahiro Shiraishi, known as the Twitter Killer, for murdering and dismembering 9 people, mostly women, after luring them via social media by promising to help them die. The 34-year-old was hanged in Tokyo in the country's first execution since 2022. Arrested back in 2017, Shiraishi pleaded guilty in 2020, admitting he killed to satisfy sexual desires. His crimes shocked Japan and raised concerns about social media safety, CNN has reported. The victims were aged 15 to 26. Justice officials said the decision followed thorough legal review. Representative Jasmine Crockett has withdrawn from the race to become the top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, acknowledging she lacked the support needed for the leadership role. Crockett, known for her outspoken style, said her approach didn't align with what colleagues were seeking. Representative Robert Garcia won the internal vote to succeed the late Representative Jerry Conley as ranking member, Fox News has reported. While Crockett pledged to remain an active and vocal committee member, the Oversight Committee continues its high-profile investigation into President Biden's mental fitness, among other issues. A large wildfire near Athens, Greece, swept through some of the local coastal towns, destroying at least 20 homes and forcing over 1,000 evacuations as Greece faced its first summer heat wave, with temperatures reaching 40 degrees Celsius. Strong winds spread flames quickly from low vegetation into residential areas. Firefighters, residents, and aircraft battled the blaze, while Coast Guard teams rescued trapped beachgoers, the BBC has reported. Authorities are investigating possible arson as the country faces heightened wildfire risks due to hot, dry conditions and climate change. North Korea is opening its long-delayed Wonsan Kamal Beach Resort to domestic tourists on the 1st of July, hoping to boost tourism despite sanctions and economic struggles. Built on the East Coast, the resort can reportedly host 20,000 visitors along a 4-kilometer beach, though its features remain unverified. Leader Kim Jong-un, who grew up in Wonsan, wants to transform the area. Foreign tourism remains limited, mainly attracting Chinese and Russian visitors, the BBC has reported. The opening follows closer ties with Russia, including a resumed train route and reported North Korean troop support for Russia's war in Ukraine. Congolese negotiators have dropped their demand for an immediate Rwandan troop withdrawal from eastern Congo, clearing the way for a U.S.-brokered peace deal expected to be signed in Washington on Friday. Rwanda has at least 7,000 troops in eastern Congo, backing the M23 rebels, though it denies direct involvement and says it's acting in self-defense against Congo-based groups like the FDLR. The revised agreement envisions a phased Rwandan withdrawal over several months, contingent on neutralizing the FDLR, Reuters has reported. The deal also aims to boost Western investment in the country's rich mineral resources, while ensuring the United States has access to critical minerals. At least 29 students died in a stampede during exams at a high school in the Central African Republic after an electrical transformer exploded and caused panic. 16 of the victims were girls. Over 260 others were injured. The president declared 3 days of national mourning and promised support for the victims' families, the DW has reported. Authorities are investigating the incident, and exams will be rescheduled. Spain's constitutional court has upheld key parts of an amnesty law pardoning over 300 Catalan separatists involved in the failed 2017 independence bid. The ruling, by a 6-4 vote, rejects most of a conservative challenge claiming the law was unconstitutional. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez welcomed the decision, saying it promotes national unity and coexistence. The amnesty deal was crucial to securing separatist party support for Sanchez's government after a hung 2023 election, the DW has reported. The ruling does not currently benefit exiled separatist leader Carlos Puigdemont, whose embezzlement case remains unresolved. Vietnam has abolished the death penalty for 8 crimes, including embezzlement and bribery, under legal reforms passed Wednesday. The changes may spare real estate tycoon Truong My Lan sentenced to death for a $12.5 billion fraud case, making her eligible for life imprisonment instead. Anyone sentenced to death for the removed crimes but not yet executed by July the 1st will have their sentence commuted to life in prison, the Associated Press has reported. Vietnam retains the death penalty for 10 crimes, including murder and terrorism. A black bear on the runway forced Japan's Yamagata Airport to cancel 12 flights and close to passengers on Thursday. First spotted in the morning, the bear reappeared at noon, prompting further closures as staff and police failed to capture it. The incident comes amid a rise in bear encounters in Japan, linked to climate change and rural depopulation, CBS News has reported. Authorities have stepped up measures, including laws allowing hunters to shoot bears in populated areas. After its recent conflict with Israel, Iran has launched a wave of arrests and executions targeting alleged Israeli spies, claiming to fight unprecedented infiltration of its security services. Authorities say leaked information enabled high-profile assassinations of IRGC commanders and nuclear scientists. 6 people accused of spying for Israel have been executed in recent weeks, and hundreds more have been arrested. Human rights groups warn of forced confessions and unfair trials, fearing more executions, the BBC has reported. Iran has also cracked down on dissent, detaining activists and threatening relatives of exiled journalists to silence critical media coverage. Canada is demanding answers from the United States after Canadian citizen Johnny Novello, 49, died in immigration custody in Miami while awaiting deportation. Novello, a longtime U.S. resident, had been convicted in 2023 on drug-related charges. His cause of death is under investigation, Axios has reported. Canadian officials have expressed condolences and are seeking more details from U.S. authorities. Florida officials are staying silent as activists report construction at an abandoned airstrip in Big Cypress National Preserve, part of Governor Ron DeSantis' plan to build a tent-based detention facility for up to 1,000 migrants. Nicknamed Alligator Alcatraz, the site is being funded with FEMA money, drawing criticism for using hurricane relief funds. Critics, including former Homeland Security Secretary Alex Howard, have condemned the project as cruel political theater, with an estimated $450 million annual cost, arguing it prioritizes spectacle over humane immigration solutions, the DW has reported. Kenneth Chesebro, a former legal advisor to Donald Trump's 2020 campaign, has been disbarred in New York for his role in a scheme to overturn Trump's election loss. A state appeals court cited his conspiracy to file false documents in Georgia as undermining constitutional democracy. Chesebro pleaded guilty in 2023. The court criticized his conduct as aggravated by his expertise in election law and found strong evidence that he was a key architect of Trump's efforts, NBC News has reported. He now joins other Trump-allied lawyers like Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis, who have also faced legal penalties. A Texas highway was closed for several hours Thursday after a 64-year-old woman crashed into a truck, then set up a lawn chair in a lane and threatened herself with a gun, leading to a standoff. The incident on I-45 near Houston ended peacefully when she surrendered. No one was hurt. Authorities said crisis negotiators and the woman's daughter helped convince her to give up. The woman has a history of mental illness, and police praised the resolution as saving her life, ABC News has reported. Traffic on the interstate has since reopened. The Department of Homeland Security is suing all 15 federal judges in Maryland over a court policy that automatically pauses certain immigration cases for 2 business days. The DHS argues this order, meant to preserve the status quo while habeas petitions are filed, is unlawful judicial overreach that disrupts deportations. The court says the policy addresses scheduling problems from a surge of last-minute petitions. The Trump administration also wants the Maryland judges to recuse themselves from the case, Fox News has reported. The lawsuit highlights tensions as Trump's deportation agenda faces legal challenges from immigrants asserting their rights. New York Mayor Eric Adams launched his re-election campaign Thursday, announcing he will run as an independent after skipping the Democratic primary where Democratic socialist Zohran Mamdani won the party's nomination. Adams positioned himself as a blue-collar alternative to Mamdani's progressive agenda, criticizing him as a silver spoon socialist. Business leaders, alarmed by Mamdani's proposals like rent freezes and higher taxes on the wealthy, may shift their support to Adams after previously backing Andrew Cuomo, The Guardian has reported. Adams's campaign promises to include reducing crime, expanding mental health services, vocational training, and affordable housing. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker announced he's running for a third term in 2026, even as speculation grows about a possible 2028 presidential bid. In his announcement video, the Democratic governor pledged to fight for affordability and freedoms while criticizing Donald Trump's administration. Pritzker, a billionaire heir and vocal Trump critic, is considered the clear favorite in the deep blue state. While he's downplayed presidential ambitions, his national appearances and advocacy for abortion rights have fueled talk of a future run, Politico has reported. His current lieutenant governor, Juliana Stratton, is running for U.S. Senate. Pope Leo XIV on Friday renewed his call for unity in the Catholic Church, urging priests to work closely with their superiors and be models of reconciliation in a divided world. During a special Holy Year week for clergy in Rome, he hosted meetings, ordained 32 new priests at St. Peter's Basilica, and sent a written message to priests worldwide. Leo emphasized humility over perfection, encouraged priests to foster communion despite tensions, and acknowledged declining priestly vocations, especially in Europe, the Associated Press has reported. His consistent focus on unity follows calls to heal rifts that deepened during Pope Francis's divisive pontificate. Oslo police have charged Maurice Holby, the 28-year-old son of Norway's crown princess, with rape, sexual assault, and bodily harm following a months-long investigation involving a double-digit number of alleged victims. The charges include 1 count of rape involving intercourse, 2 counts without intercourse, 4 sexual assaults, and 2 cases of bodily harm. Hoiby has cooperated with police but denies most of the allegations, especially those of sexual abuse and violence, The Guardian has reported. He remains free pending trial and maintains the presumption of innocence. The Royal Palace has not commented. The S&P 500 hit a record high on Friday, rebounding from this spring's sell-off triggered by President Trump's tariff plans. The index rose 0.5%, surpassing its February peak, while the Nasdaq and the Dow also gained. Markets recovered after Trump scaled back and delayed broad tariffs that he announced back in April, though higher rates remain on Chinese goods and select imports. A new U.S.-China agreement is easing some trade restrictions, The Hill has reported. Meanwhile, inflation data showed prices rising faster than expected in May, dimming hopes for a near-term Federal Reserve rate cut. The White House plans to limit intelligence sharing with Congress after an early assessment of U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear sites leaked, a senior official confirmed. The administration will reduce what it posts on CapNet, the classified system for lawmakers. The move, criticized by Democrats as an attempt to hide facts, comes ahead of a Senate briefing on the strikes. The leak revealed the strikes may have set back Iran's nuclear program by only 3 to 6 months. Speaker Mike Johnson condemned the leak and suspects it came from Congress, NBC News has reported. Meanwhile, Trump officials defended the strikes as having caused severe damage. U.S. consumer prices rose slightly in May, with the Fed's preferred inflation gauge, the PCE price index, up 0.1% monthly and 2.3% annually, still above the Fed's 2% target. Core PCE, which excludes food and energy, rose 0.2% on the month and 2.7% annually. Meanwhile, consumer spending fell 0.1%, and personal income dropped 0.4%, signaling a slowing economy. Markets expect the Fed to hold rates steady in July, though hopes for a rate cut persist, CNBC has reported. Inflation pressures remain muted overall, with services costs driving most of the increase while goods prices stayed nearly flat. Nike shares surged 15% on Friday after the company announced plans to shift production away from China to reduce exposure to U.S. tariffs, which are expected to cost the company $1 billion. Starting this fall, Nike will implement targeted price increases in the United States to offset the impact. The company said it will reduce China-based production from 16% to single digits by 2026, the Associated Press reported. Despite reporting better than expected earnings, Nike faces slowing consumer spending and rising economic uncertainty, along with brand fatigue and growing anti-US sentiment in China. A bright flash and loud boom startled parts of the southeastern United States on Wednesday afternoon as a suspected fireball streaked across the sky around 12:30 p.m. The rare daytime event was seen on cameras in Atlanta and reported from Tennessee to South Carolina, shaking homes and prompting 911 calls. Experts believe it was likely a large meteor entering Earth's atmosphere, possibly dropping meteorites, NBC9 News has reported. No damage or injuries were reported, but meteorite hunters are expected to search the area for valuable fragments. Russia has massed 110,000 troops near Pokrovsk in eastern Ukraine, aiming to capture the strategic city, this according to Ukraine's military chief. Despite repeated offensives over the past year, Moscow has failed to seize Pokrovsk, which is vital for Ukrainian supply lines and defense in Donetsk. Ukrainian forces have used drones and defensive operations to repel assaults, CNN has reported. Russia is now trying to encircle the city from the south and the northeast, seeking both tactical gains and a symbolic victory by reaching Donetsk's administrative border. Russia launched its largest aerial assault on Ukraine since the 2022 invasion, firing 537 aerial weapons overnight, including 477 drones and 60 missiles. This is according to Ukraine's Air Force. About 249 were shot down, and 226 were lost to electronic jamming. The attacks targeted several regions, including in western Ukraine. At least 2 people were killed and several others were injured. Poland scrambled jets to protect its airspace. Ukraine also reported losing an F-16 that killed its pilot, Fox News has reported. Despite Russian President Vladimir Putin's call for new peace talks in Istanbul, no diplomatic breakthrough appears close. Police in Belgrade fired tear gas and arrested dozens as clashes erupted during a massive protest demanding snap elections and the resignation of the president Alexander Vučić. About 140,000 people joined the student-led rally, chanting for elections and accusing the government of corruption and repression. The protest began after a deadly train station collapse in December. That fueled anger over alleged negligence, Al Jazeera has reported. Vučić, rejecting calls for elections, accused protesters of trying to overthrow the state, while opposition leaders blamed authorities for escalating violence. Thousands protested in Bangkok, demanding the prime minister resign after a leaked phone call with the former Cambodian leader angered the public. In the call, the prime minister called him uncle and criticized the Thai commander, sparking accusations of undermining Thailand's sovereignty. A coalition partner quit the government, and protesters blocked roads, calling her a, quote, enemy of the state. She apologized, but defended the call as a negotiation. Now, the Constitutional Court is set to consider a petition for her removal, the BBC has reported. Tensions between Thailand and Cambodia have been rising after a deadly border clash. Afghanistan is slowly opening up to tourism, with visitors arriving by plane, motorbike, and even bicycle. The Taliban government, eager to boost the economy, is promoting the country's scenic and historic sites despite ongoing security concerns. Tourist numbers remain modest but growing, with nearly 9,000 visitors last year. While violence has dropped since the Taliban takeover in 2021, attacks still occur, including a deadly assault on tourists in Bamiyan back in May of 2024, the Associated Press has reported. The government sees tourism as a vital source of revenue and a way to showcase Afghan culture and hospitality. The Israeli military ordered new evacuations in northern Gaza on Sunday ahead of intensified operations against Hamas, warning residents to move south. Fighting escalated in Jabalia, killing at least 6, while 5 more died in a strike near Mawasi in the south. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was set to review the offensive's progress amid concerns for Israeli hostages, the Times of Israel has reported. Meanwhile, international criticism over civilian deaths grew, with France offering to help secure food aid distribution in Gaza. Uber Eats has launched autonomous robot deliveries in Atlanta through a partnership with Serve Robotics. The service, now available in Midtown, Old Fourth Ward, and downtown, with plans to expand. The robots travel up to 4 miles per hour with a 48-mile range and can handle Atlanta's weather. Customers can choose robot delivery from restaurants like Real Tacos, Ponko Chicken, and Shake Shack, tracking and unlocking the robot via the app, Fox 5 Atlanta has reported. Atlanta now joins Los Angeles, Miami, and Dallas-Fort Worth as cities offering Uber Eats robot deliveries. Hundreds of protesters, including environmental activists and Native American leaders, gathered Saturday along U.S. Highway 41 in the Florida Everglades to oppose construction of a new immigrant detention center on an old airstrip. Critics say the facility threatens sacred native lands, endangered species, and wetlands. The project is moving quickly under emergency powers granted by Governor Ron DeSantis to address immigration by passing some regulations. The state plans to house 5,000 detainees in tents and trailers by July, NBC News has reported. Environmental groups have filed a lawsuit to stop construction, demanding a full review of its impact. A Colorado funeral home owner, John Halford, was sentenced to 20 years in prison for fraud after storing nearly 190 bodies in a decaying building and sending families fake ashes. He and his wife ran the Return to Nature funeral home, hiding the remains between 2019 and 2023 while spending nearly $900,000 in COVID aid on luxury items. Families described profound trauma on learning their loved ones weren't cremated, NPR has reported. Halford also faces state sentencing for 190 counts of corpse abuse in August, while his wife awaits trial on related charges. Thousands of drivers were stranded overnight for more than 8 hours on a rural stretch of the West Virginia Turnpike after a mudslide blocked northbound lanes near Charleston. Heavy rains clogged a storm drain, flooding the highway and backing up traffic 12 miles with no detours in place. The Parkway's authority admitted failing to reroute traffic and promised policy changes. Though no injuries were reported, motorists were left without food, water, or information, CBS News has reported. Governor Patrick Morrisey called the situation unacceptable and ordered an investigation. A Kansas sheriff's deputy was killed Friday evening in Phillipsburg while responding to a fireworks complaint. Deputy Brandon Gade, 30, was shot during a struggle with Colton Griffith, 27, after attempting to arrest him. Despite his injuries, Gade returned fire, killing Griffith at the scene. Gade later died at a hospital, the Associated Press has reported. The U.S. manufacturing sector is showing signs of slowing down. This is according to the Bank of America Institute. While tariffs may encourage companies to bring production back to the United States, this reshoring is likely to rely more on automation than increased hiring due to labor shortages and high cost. Despite a drop in new manufacturing orders and contraction signals, tariffs could help certain subsectors recover. Reshoring has created 2 million jobs over 15 years, but has slowed recently, Fortune has reported. About 60% of analysts expect production to continue shifting to the United States if tariffs stay high. Former Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hortman was laid to rest with her husband on Saturday, weeks after they were killed in a politically motivated attack at their home. Authorities say the suspect, who also targeted other lawmakers, posed as a law enforcement officer to carry out the shootings. The attack, which left 2 others injured, prompted Minnesota's largest manhunt. Thousands mourned Hortman, who was the first woman to lie in state at the Capitol, NBC News has reported. The killings drew bipartisan condemnation and renewed calls to confront political violence and extremism. Taiwan's vice president vowed not to be intimidated after Czech intelligence services revealed that Chinese diplomats planned to stage a car collision during her visit to Prague in March of 2024. Czech officials said the plot, coordinated from the Chinese embassy, aimed to demonstratively confront her but was stopped in the planning stage. Taiwan condemned the actions as a serious threat to her safety and demanded an apology. The Guardian has reported. China denied any wrongdoing and criticized the Czech government for hosting her and reiterated its opposition to Taiwan's independence. After the apparent victory of Zoran Mamdani in New York's Democratic mayoral primary, the Instagram account of the late Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, who died last year, was seen liking a congratulatory post highlighting a growing trend of social media activity from accounts of deceased lawmakers. Other examples include the late Representative Sylvester Turner's account changing its profile picture and posting after his death, and Representative Jerry Connolly's accounts promoting early voting for his chosen successor. These incidents underscore the lack of formal procedures for managing lawmakers' social media accounts after death, posing security and ethical concerns over beyond-the-grave engagement, Politico has reported. Elon Musk blasted the Senate's large domestic policy bill on Saturday, calling it utterly insane and destructive for raising taxes on clean energy projects like solar, batteries, wind, geothermal, and nuclear. He argued it would kill millions of jobs and harm U.S. competitiveness while subsidizing coal for steel production. The bill, backed by President Trump, has fueled a public feud between Musk and Trump after Musk previously called it a disgusting abomination and urged Congress to kill it. His criticism also led to a sharp drop in Tesla stock and threats from Trump to review government contracts, CNBC has reported. On Saturday, Musk's 54th birthday, activists held protest over his ties to Trump and Germany's far-right AfD party. J.M. Smucker Company plans to eliminate artificial colors from all of its products by the end of 2027 and from foods sold through K-12 schools by the 2026-2027 school year. While most Smucker products are already free of synthetic dyes, some, like sugar-free jams, ice cream toppings, and Hostess snacks, still contain them. Smucker joins other major food companies, including Nestle, Conagra, Kraft Heinz, and General Mills, in pledging to phase out synthetic dyes amid growing federal scrutiny and recent regulatory actions, NPR has reported. Microsoft is retiring the infamous blue screen of death that has frustrated Windows users for decades. In its place, Windows 11 devices running on the 24H2 update will now see a new black-colored screen of death during unexpected restarts. The redesigned screen is part of Microsoft's effort to, quote, streamline the unexpected restart experience, and will begin rolling out later this summer, CNN has reported. The update will also reduce reboot times to about 2 seconds for most users, promising a faster recovery from system crashes. Phoenix police rescued a baby last month who had been left alone for days after the child's mother died in their apartment, officials said Friday. Back on May 14th, officers responded to a neighbor's call asking for a welfare check on the woman, who had recently given birth but hadn't been seen or heard from for several days. Body cam footage shows officers spotting the woman's body through an unlocked window before forcing the door open. Inside, they found the baby on a bed. The infant was placed in a stroller and taken by Phoenix Fire Department personnel to a hospital for life-saving care. Police said the child is expected to make a full recovery, CBS News has reported. The mother's identity has not been released, and the Maricopa County Medical Examiner is investigating the cause of her death. President Donald Trump's Big Beautiful Bill cleared a key Senate vote 51-49, with Republicans largely united behind it despite Democratic opposition. Senator Ron Johnson switched to a yes, calling it a vital step toward fiscal responsibility. Democrats condemned the nearly 1,000-page bill as radical and a plan to delay debate by forcing a full reading, Fox News has reported. Trump praised GOP senators for advancing his agenda to cut spending, secure the border, and protect gun rights, aiming to sign the bill by July the 4th. Warren Buffett is donating $6 billion in Berkshire Hathaway stock to 5 foundations, raising his total donation since 2006 to about $60 billion. The largest portion, 9.4 million shares, goes to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Trust. Other recipients include the Susan Thompson Buffett Foundation, Sherwood Foundation, Howard G. Buffett Foundation, and Novo Foundation. Buffett's donations use Class B shares, which are more affordable than Class A shares. Known for his value investing, Buffett's wealth is mainly in Berkshire stock, now worth around $145 billion, the Associated Press has reported. He plans for nearly all of his estate to support philanthropy. SpaceX launched 2 Starlink missions on Saturday, June the 28th, sending a total of 53 broadband satellites into low Earth orbit. The first Falcon 9 rocket lifted off from Cape Canaveral, Florida, carrying 27 satellites, while the second launched from Vandenberg, California, with 26 satellites. Now, both rocket boosters successfully landed on drone ships after their flights, marking the 5th flight for one and the 8th flight for the other, Space.com has reported. These missions expand SpaceX's active Starlink network to over 7,900 satellites, continuing the company's effort to build out its global internet mega constellation. Ukraine's defense ministry has approved the Ukrainian-made Maraka, or Ant Unmanned Ground Vehicle, or UGV, for combat use. It announced this back on June 28th. Designed to support frontline units in tough conditions like enemy artillery fire and minefields, the tracked robotic platform can carry over half a ton of cargo across long distances and navigate rough terrain and shallow water. It also has multiple control channels to maintain operation even in areas targeted by Russian electronic warfare, the Kyiv Independent has reported. The approval is part of Ukraine's broader push since 2024 to scale up production of UGVs and to reduce human involvement on the battlefield, with roles ranging from combat support to evacuation and even logistics.